It is now. It's happening now. Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we accept the name and move on.
Seconded.
I second.
Show of hands. Are there any nays? Ms. Tove, we're the Center Street Minion.
Difficult. And thank you, Michael, for leading the effort to get to that name.
Yes,
Glad to do it. Happy to do it.
okay. Shiva Committee. I don't see Misty, but I'm sure
I'm here. I'm here.
she's, okay.
I
Good.
am. Good. Let me get, I'm not looking at clock. Let me know if I'm talking too much. I sent the proposal out to folks a few days ago and I got some feedback, which I appreciate. Just so you know, I had been in conversation with Zelda starting about a month ago, that we really, well, first of all, I had raised this as an issue starting about a year ago, whether we were going to continue as one mignon or not. I asked Judah to take over for me right before COVID. I was getting extremely burnt out and he graciously took it over. So that was great. COVID obviously changed the way we did things for quite a while. And now we're, you know, people, unfortunately, death happens and people are figuring out ways to make Shiva meaningful during COVID. As we move forward toward a time where we hope that things will get back to normal, I thought this new beginning gives us an opportunity to take a look at what we've done, appreciate what we've done, express all of presumably our immense gratitude to Zelda and Elkin as her sidekick much of the time for, you know, nearly single-handedly making the Shiva committee and really the experience for mourners as meaningful as it's been for decades. I've been on the Shiva committee for about 20 years, if not more. Zelda's always been there, you know, front and center. So I wanted to take this time to express our appreciation, and with Zelda's permission, you know, like I said, about a month ago, I was saying, we have every year, it seems, we just, the expectations are just higher and higher. And interestingly enough, and with all due respect to Serene Victor, who's not going to like this, as the expectations have sort of grown, so has our age, and so have our bones. And you know, we had, I reached out about 5 years ago to the Shiva committee, and we got a lot of wonderful people to contribute to the Shiva committee. Many people, most of the people, you know, said, I can do this and this, but I can't schlep. And, you know, schlepping has become a big deal for the Shiva committee. Much of what we do is schlepping. And it's the kind of thing that, you know, somebody dies, and very often in a short period of time, we have to figure out how to get stuff to them. So in the past, the kind of philosophy, and this was not something that Zelda instituted, but I think all of us on the Shiva committee, you want as much as possible to insulate the mourner from, you know, the way the sausage gets made, so to speak. By the way, after my father's funeral, there literally was sausage being served. But Sammy's taking the So you try to insulate it as much as possible. And I think that is something that, you know, I think people appreciate. I think mourners have expressed, you know, they like, it's all seamless. And I'm realizing as we look at our community going forward, the ultimate goal is provide a meaningful Shiva experience for the mourner. That's the most important thing. And we do not want to detract from that at all. But while in the past, we've been trying very hard, you really tried hard not to minimize the emails saying, you know, we still need 7 people to sign up on Tuesday morning. It feels low naim. It's not comfortable to do that in public because, you know, the mourner is going to see that. And I've always felt, as much as possible, I try to avoid that. the truth is, by avoiding that, which I think is what is an honorable thing to do, it does actually create more work for the committee, because what it means is, let's say 7 people have signed up for Tuesday morning, but no one signed up for davening and laning. I could send an email out to the entire kahal and say, we need a laner and a davener. In the past, I tried hard not to do that. Going forward, the committee may have to do that. In the past, we said, you want 12 chairs, you want 15 chairs, no problem. Going forward, I think we will ask the community, the family, if you have enough dining room chairs and couches and seating, for 15 people, we'll leave it as is. If you do need folding chairs, then we'll get you the folding chairs. And we have never begrudged bringing folding chairs over, but again, going forward, we want to make it just realizing that this is another thing. So so we may go to the kahal and say, who in the kahal can pick up chairs from Barry's garage for Tuesday? And the truth is, if we don't need the chairs, then we're not going to push the chairs, as much as we have in the past. And then the other thing that really kind of the overarching theme to this, I think, is, and I was thinking a lot about Micah and Nosh and Drosh. Micah does Nosh and Drosh, occasionally has to ask for help. People try to pitch in and, answer the call. And sometimes Micah doesn't get all the help that he needs. And I think we all value Nosh and Drosh, immensely. The Shiva committee, I was kind of thinking, wouldn't it be interesting if, when there is a notice of a loss, if somebody says, you know what, I'm around next week. I'm not on the committee, but how can I be helpful? I think that's probably the kind of thing that might have happened in the past when our community was smaller. And it's perfectly natural that we've moved away from that. But I would like to try, I'm using tonight to try to encourage people to think about that. I understand the hesitation to join this committee because no one wants to be asked to do something when the life is topsy-turvy. But the truth is, to go to Zelda's and pick some stuff up and deliver it, you don't have to be on the committee to do that. And that's the kind of culture I'm hoping we can get toward.
Thank you so much. And I apologize for interrupting, but I think it might be helpful if you can hone in on what your asks are, such as what you were just suggesting.
Sure. And this,
so because we'll need to transition in just a minute.
So the big ask, the big reveal, I guess, is there will be more public appeals to the kahal to pitch in, and we welcome unsolicited help. The only other big change, and this is something that came up a couple years ago, is the community had voted at a town meeting, I will say against my wishes, but had voted to make offering a Suda Chavra, I think it's called, to the family. And I am proposing, and Zelda agreed, that we stop, the Shiva committee stop providing that function. I think Edie and I had a back and forth. There's nothing wrong with a group of people pitching in and saying, there's a loss, how can we help? Or just going to the mourner's family. I think most of us are in a point now where we know that death happens, that, it doesn't, but my point is, it doesn't have to be the Shiva committee. So that's the only significant change, other than being a little more public about the appeal. Another change, and this is not set in stone, is in the past, the prescribed times have been very set in stone. And I'm realizing if the mourner wants to start Shachrit at 7:30 and request a Shiva committee to do that, we could say yes, with the knowledge that it may take a reminder to make sure people know it's at 7:30 and not 7, and it may impact how many people sign up. I guess another change would be, if a family tells us they have 5 people for a minyan every day, I'm not going to worry if we have 5 people sign up. If we have 3 people sign up, I'll worry. But if we only have 5 people sign up, I'm not going to worry. And I won't see it as a sign of disappointment that we don't have 10 people sign up each time. So they're pretty little changes that, other than it being a little more public and soliciting help.
Again, thank you so much, Missy. We have a question from Deborah. I don't know if we have other questions, but go ahead, Deborah.
Actually, a couple of suggestions. So I think what would be very helpful is if when you send out both Diana Met notice, if you would say, we expect that we'll need 2, 3, 4 volunteers to help with the schlepping once you've ascertained, for example, that folding chairs are needed. And another thing that would be helpful is if you would be able to say the family member or the person in the family that people can offer help to, for example, for Sudatava.
Okay,
So
Okay.
I think that would
That makes sense.
perhaps also encourage
right.
volunteering.
Miriam, go ahead.
Yeah, and so Missy, something else that you had written about, and I think it's a helpful addition, is the suggestion that we open up, sign up for who are the laners and daveners to outside of Minion members. That hadn't necessarily been the case before, but really broadening who can fill those roles.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Any other responses, questions? Serene, go ahead. You're muted, Serene.
Thank you. Missy and team, you've been amazing, and I want to publicly acknowledge that. Does our budget, do we have a budget line for the meal for the Suda?
In the Newton Center Minion, there was a budget line. I don't know exactly what it was. We generally, the meals were up to $200. I will say it's like I wrote in the email, it's complicated because we're providing a meal. $200, as you probably can guess, doesn't go super far. We're providing a meal for the immediate family, and very often it's not just the immediate family that's there. And as I also said, a big complication is we started having the family, the mourner's family, make sure that somebody was there to receive the food, because for many, many, many years, that was something the Shiva committee did. And just recently, that's something that we stopped doing.
Budget was about $250, and
Okay.
the caterers charge $15 a head. So we try to limit it to the immediate family. And I mean, at $150, you've got what, 10 people? No. Wait a minute. No, they charge $15 a head for the meal. So 10 people is $150 plus delivery.
So when it has gone over that, how have you handled it?
Dan paid it, but we just try to make sure that going forward, we didn't do that.
Barry has a question.
Couple of things. One is, what's the status of the chairs in terms of the Temple Emmanuel Minion?
Good question. I don't know. And that's something I have been in discussion with Judah. And the other thing is, I guess, Rhoda, we were going to take maybe a show. So Barry, sorry, before I forget, we're going to take a show of hands to make sure that folks are okay with doing a joint Shiva committee for the first 3 months.
Right, thank you for reminding me.
Okay. And so the status of the chairs, I don't know. I mean, I will say that I've been in touch with Judah, and Judah has been in touch with the Temple Emmanuel bereavement, and I have not heard anything from them about wanting to use the chairs. I will find out and get back to you.
Can I jump in, Missy? Because I talked to Saul and Elkin when we were dividing up a lot of the tangible assets, and our discussion was mostly that the Shiva stuff would stay at the Gamzus, and Saul didn't seem to have any problem with that, and he has taken that to the rest of the TE leadership. So that's consistent with what you said. There hasn't seemed to be any interest in the chairs from them.
So
Yeah.
I'm noticing on the chat that Deborah's Hirschmayer's been wanting to ask a question. So why don't I call on you, Deborah, and then we'll do that show of hands about the 3-month transitional period. And then I think we could move on to the next agenda item. Go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, so I thank you to Missy and Zelda and everyone else. I feel bad that I live so far away that I'm not more involved in helping with Shiva Minyanim or preparations or schlepping or anything of the sort. I wanted to just, one of the things Missy said concerns me, that if the Minyan doesn't make it a practice of offering a meal, and she said, but that doesn't prevent a small group from deciding to do it. And my concern is that if that is how we go, that there'll be certain people or families in our Minyan who are popular, who are well-known, and those people will get that support, and people who are more tangential, maybe someone who's a single person or a family where there's, you know, disabilities or challenges that really make it difficult, won't get the support they need. So I'd like us to, we don't have to do it now, but I'd like to think a little bit more about how we might be able to do that so that we ensure that people who really do need that support would have it. And I'm willing to work on Zoom with someone if you know, if you want to think more about that.
Okay, thank you, Deborah.
If I could just add one more thing, I'm sorry, Rhoda, I didn't quite finish what I was
Yeah,
talking about
okay.
with that. Just having to do with the whole issue of the Sudat Havra'ah. I do think that's a little larger deal than just talking about it now and letting people themselves handle it. There are many people who don't even know what it is and that it is traditional, and that the Minyan has been supportive of people doing it. And one has to even describe to some people what exactly it is and why are there eggs and why is this and, you know, and so on. So I'm not as comfortable about just making it the responsibility of the mourners to take care of it at this point.
Okay. So I'm trying to think about what makes sense in terms of that, Barry. Maybe write your concerns to Missy, to the Shiva
Okay.
Committee. Thank you. And
There certainly could be a group of people that take, like when they see, there could be a group of people that say, we can't schlep, we can't set up the thing on the computer, we can't do this, but we want to be in charge of the Sudat Havra'ah. And that's something that I said to Edie. And then, but not have it be under the auspices of the Shiva Committee, because otherwise somebody on the committee has to inevitably do it if no one else has stepped up. And that has happened a number of times.
it could be like an adjunct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'll send suggestions to Missy about that. I
Yeah,
have some
thank
ideas.
I will just say one of the reasons why I had a sort of hard time with it, having grown up in Ohio, and thank God I've been spared. You know, we do have a lot of members that attend funerals of family members out of town. So just, you know, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it? So 3 months.
About the 3-month transition, during which we will continue the partnership with the Minyan FTE. Is everybody okay with that? Anybody not okay with that? Speak now. Okay, so
Can I say one last thing very quickly? I will just say, in this context, it has been very nice to know that for the most part, for every part, people have said, you guys have been doing the Shiva Committee, you know what sort of makes sense for this transition time. You know, we appreciate what you do and you know what's best. I got to tell you, it is very appreciated that I felt like this community had our back, and I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Alrighty. So now we move on to the governance committee update, and Heidi, you are on.
Hi, everybody. I am on, but I see that just about the whole committee is here as well. So you are all welcome to fill in if I forget anything or miss an important point, but I will go through this quickly. I also have it all written down. I will send it out. I did not do that in advance, but I will send it out after the meeting. So the purpose of the governance committee is to make a recommendation to our Kahal on a governance structure. Pretty straightforward, right? The members are Michael Cronenberg, Alan, Edie, Marla, Claudette, Larry, Susan Sered, Ken Gould, David Harlow, who was on and has stepped off, and myself. Alan and Michael were initially co-chairing it. Alan stepped down from that role, but is really active. And I'll talk a little bit about what the committee has been up to. But the members, that group, bring a really wide range of experiences and perspectives to the committee and to our conversations. And we've been focusing on developing a framework for approaching different areas of governance. Specifically, we've been exploring options and models for leadership, decision-making, and delegation of powers. And we have been building this and developing this because members of, through efforts of members of the committee have done a lot. They've surveyed and spoken with former Minion moderators to get a wide range of perspectives, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what they'd like to see, what they wish hadn't happened. Spoken with members and leaders from several other Minionim around the country to understand their models, what's worked, what hasn't worked, but really to broaden our perspective on what the options are. Some members met with members of our values committee to talk about, alignment and just to understand how the different committees were sort of on the same page. We've met as a group. I went back through my calendar. I counted at least 8 meetings since February as an entire committee, and as well as multiple different subgroups and task-oriented jobs outside of those meetings and between those meetings. The work has really focused on developing and iterating on documents to ultimately towards a document of synthesizing all of our learnings and our deliberations. We've had some internal survey to try to narrow it down, see what we could eliminate. There's been a lot of process. I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. So our next steps, because we're really focusing on this iterative process with the CAHAL towards our goal of making a recommendation. We're meeting again next week. We're going to finalize, hopefully that's the goal, a comprehensive, but yet also easy to read background document. And that's a challenge because there's a lot of really good information and we really want to make it readable and understandable, but also comprehensive to reflect everything that's gone into it. So that meeting, we're going to meet tomorrow, and then we're going to have, which I haven't yet scheduled, I will send out a save the date for an informational, educational meeting with the CAHAL on Tuesday, August 3rd. And the goal of that meeting is really to walk everybody through our thinking, through the options that we've identified that we will circulate in advance of that meeting. It's really about information and education. Following that, we will provide an opportunity for discussions and opinions and hashing things out and all of the reasons why people think something is great or why something is terrible. We will provide an opportunity for that and document it, which will probably lead then into some kind of survey to go out to the community, again, towards refining our decisions. And if that, hopefully that survey will give us enough information to really make the recommendation. And if not, we'll take it from there and see what our next step is. And even when that's done, there is still more to do. We backburnered issues of membership and meetings. But these notion of leadership and navigators, or what the role is, and decision-making just seemed so big and so much to take on. And even just hearing this process from Bob about, oh, no one else wanted to be a moderator, couldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, and all the gratitude to Rhoda for stepping up. So it really speaks to our challenge of developing a sustainable leadership model going forward. Committee members, before we open it up to everybody else, is there anything that you want to add, correct me on? Oh, I'm sorry about Alan, Alan Lobovitz. I apologize. I went through names. They're in my written document. So my apologies. Thank you, Alan.
We have a surfeit of Allens.
I know. I apologize. Any other confusion about the names? Committee members, Alan in particular, do you want to say anything? Did I miss anything? All right. Happy to
Thank
take
you.
questions, but go ahead, Rhoda.
I'm going to invite questions next.
All Allens are over 70. It's funny about some names.
If there are no questions, then we'll wait to hear from you and your committee about next steps.
August 3rd.
It sounds like you have an incredibly thoughtful process that you've developed that'll take us where we need to get to.
I will add, and I didn't confirm this with the committee, but I think we would welcome more members on the committee. We have a lot of work still ahead of us, and we're working really hard. But I think we would welcome additional folks if anyone wants to hop on this super fun party train that we're on.
Are there particular tasks that you need to recruit volunteers for?
Off the top, we're going into this process and of really refining a document and then developing some kind of survey. But I think there's a lot of work that has to happen in between meetings. So if somebody wanted to join us tomorrow, next Tuesday, or just reach out to me and I'll fill you in.
Send out an email also, if you would, Heidi.
I will. All of what I wrote, including everybody's last names, is in a document. I'll put that right. I'll put that in an email to the community right now.
But also the specific ask for volunteers in a separate email so people can see that and be reminded that you're calling for more people.
It should be a separate email. I think one email.
I think so. So it doesn't get lost in the text.
If I put it at the top and then say attached is our summary of where we've been, and I can attach my notes as a document.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Appreciate it. Where do we go next? Ron, on the hybrid Zoom live stream exploration of that?
A purposely vague title. And I want to reflect that we don't really have a committee as such. We mostly have Beth Nadich, who's done the vast majority of work, but as everyone knows, really needing to step back a little bit from the hands-on, but has really had a very active Zoom minion going through mostly all the pandemic. Kind of took a little while to get rolling, but it continues to now. Usually getting about 30 screens in on a Zoom. People still find it the right way to dive in one way or another, or it fills a need. And so from that, we really want to reflect that going forward, even with hopefully a pandemic well behind us, there will still be a way in which we can include more members of the Minion on a regular basis at 1320 by having some component that allows for attendance from home or potentially from traveling or whatever the specific need might be. I did send out, I hope, a fairly detailed email pointing out mostly that we have just started the process of thinking this through. We have not made any decisions. We've not made any purchases. And anything kind of goes for ideas for people who would potentially be sitting in person at 1320 and those who would potentially be sitting at some other location hoping to join by Zoom or whatever mechanism we have. I think the overall pieces that have to fit into place are, of course, the halacha that we can all feel comfortable with, the spirit of what it means to be participatory in Shabbat and to meeting the needs of the whole community, as well as just the practical pieces. It isn't our space to do whatever we want with. We do need to connect with the IAC folks. The physical layout is still something we're all getting familiar with, and the potential of having a camera at some point that would be on before Shabbat and how would it get turned on, et cetera, still needs to definitely be worked out. Something ceiling mounted unobtrusive would be lovely. But as of right now, the idea of whether we could even mount a camera on their ceiling, it's not our space 24/7, would probably need to run by IAC as well. But none of that has been done at this point. What we are hoping for is that at least some of the religious movements that would think, even consider the possibility of camera are putting out shuvah. We would hope to be able to figure out a way in everyone's schedules, ideally before holidays, to at least be able to pull together some learning about this so people can feel comfortable that they've understood the halacha as best as they could in their own needs. And then, of course, to start working on what even is really reasonable and practical. I think the way it looks like right now, what we would hope for is something of a camera and sound that would broadcast the action in the 1320 building to the outside participants. Obviously, password protected. We would not expect this to be open to the general world, but really just to our own membership. But that the people that were on the other side of the camera that were basically sitting at home or couldn't come in for whatever that reason might be, would still have the potential to interact with each other on like a Zoom-like platform, so they would have their own sort of community within a community kind of feeling, and that after the services were over, they would still potentially be connected and be able to chat and have a little drash of, a little kiddush type for themselves as well. And I think that's really about all of it. It's really very much a work in progress. And as I said, so right now it's been mostly Beth and a few of us that are doing the Zoom in and kind of giving this some thought. And so I did send out an email just yesterday. People can feel free to respond to me that way. I'll put out another email with a little call for requests, but if people are interested in tackling any component of this, or if you just have a strong opinion, I would just ask you to direct strong opinions to me. Beth would appreciate not having the strong opinions directed at her just at this moment. But if you direct them to me, we'll compile everything and do our best to come up with a solution that does meet the needs from all perspectives.
Thank you, Ron. Responses, questions?
I see Sherry is on board. I don't know if anybody else is asking. Sherry's having her hand up. I don't
Sherry is, she's on the call now.
No, her hand is up.
Oh, I don't see her. Sherry, go ahead.
Yes. First of all, just to let everybody else know, I've been a faithful Zoom attender because I'm not driving on Shabbat. And Ron has been immensely helpful in beginning to work through all these issues for the Zoom group. And in our last Shabbat, we do Kiddush and Shmooze, stick around and schmooze afterwards. And people expressed, I want to draw a distinction. In a live stream service, the people on the outside can see what's going on, can't interact with each other. There are only watchers. In a Zoom service, people can interact with each other via the chat, and it feels much more interactive. Ron, have I got that right?
I think that's exactly right, and that's the hope that we fill that need. Yes.
Yeah, and you expressed the possibility. It looked like the conservative movement's POSEC was going to be coming up with a way to use Zoom, and you're pursuing that. I just want to clarify that that's still the case.
We're pursuing that, recognizing that not everyone hostens to the conservative movement, but nevertheless, as at least one source of information and guidance that we can take advantage of.
Yeah, I'm particularly raising this because Robbie Fine sent out just today something about their planning for the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and they're feeling challenged to get some decisions about space very quickly because people want to know what they're volunteering for and are they needed and so on. And he was already positing that it had to be a live stream service to augment the spaces. And I wrote him an email back. I'm sorry I didn't CC anybody else, but I would be very appreciative if you would make sure to talk to Robbie and clarify. I don't know why he thinks it has to be live stream and not Zoom.
I read his email slightly differently, but I was just emailing with him about something else before I'll email again. But I think his idea was that, and I think it's true, I think there will still be a Zoom high holiday service running as on Shabbat, set, and I think he's worried about how many of the numbers are going to be.
Yeah, but that's because he didn't realize that it didn't have to be that way. It could also be Zooming. Anyway, so
I'll confirm with him for sure.
great.
If I may
Thank
just
you.
add, since Rob and I are working together on that, part of the issue is somebody has to control the service because some people do not mute, and sometimes there's all sorts of noise happening in the Zoom. So it's not that simple for somebody to be sitting there for that length of time controlling everything. That was part of it. So we were trying, and we do not think that there would be enough people for that to be the only option beyond an inside at the cafeteria and an outside one. But we wanted to have the option for people to be able to attend remotely, but also not to interfere with the ongoing the ongoing tefillah.
Right, and I agree with that. I think you're talking Elkin, about high holidays. But there would be, if we were thinking about this as a model, potentially the only people that would hear or be able to interact with each other would be those that were not physically in the room. There would be no microphone transmitting sound into the in-person service.
I'd like to hear from people. People can send me email. There's many options for technology, but the most important thing is what is it that people want out of it. And so I'd like to hear some of that from people. I don't think it's black and white Zoom versus live stream. There's many options for mixing and matching. So I'd like to hear what people would like to get out of the technology. And you can contact me, by email.
Well, Tim, that's still the thing that we're working on. And so that's a work in progress, is trying to get a good feel from everybody. And I agree with you. We are not wedded to Zoom as the only platform. But I think the broad feeling from those that have been participating in the Zoom minyanim for Shabbat would be that having that capacity to interact with somebody, even if it's somebody else who's also just in their home, is a big plus. But I think most of us would agree that having somebody who could make a noise from their home into the service that's in person probably would not work out. Right. So it's some combination of those two things. I also am not thinking that we would have a big screen up somewhere that everyone could, in the service, would see the images of those who are at home. So it's a pretty constrained range of what we're looking at.
I would also like to hear from people that different opinions about the halachic aspects of this, because in the past we've always set whatever technology up on Friday and not touched it, and it brings additional challenges that aren't present when you're running a Zoom service, because it may be that people will be most comfortable if this is automatic and unmanned.
Or, for example, I think that might even be ideal, because I think the other challenge we'll have is the IAC will potentially be in that room on Friday evenings. They have every other Friday, they have a Shabbat service on Friday evenings, and I'm presuming they would not want our cameras up and running while they're having their Shabbat events. So it may just be a matter of necessity that it goes on automatically, because it wouldn't be a possibility of turning something on Friday night.
Right. So it is.
Tim, sorry, you want to?
Go ahead.
I was going to suggest that the two of you coordinate. It sounds like, Tim, you would be an important member of Ron's working group. And also, I don't know if you've captured one of the chats from Deborah, that this is already happening at the synagogue in Portsmouth. Yeah. There's a model.
But Deborah's a very regular member of the
right.
Zoom, and we've been talking about this, yes.
Yeah, I'm in touch with people at other shuls who have technology that works already. For instance, that turns the stream on, just before services on Shabbat and turns them off afterwards automatically. Things like that. So there are people who have blazed the trail for us.
I think it's going to be converging, Tim, because the more we know about what's possible technology-wise, helps us decide whether it's all permissible in our group.
Right. So there's research to be done, and you have what you need, Ron, to move forward with
I
that?
do. I'm mindful that Micah, I think, was raising his hand too. I don't know if that's true, Micah.
I didn't.
I was gonna basically say the same thing that Tim said. It doesn't have to be Zoom.
Right.
We can have a multifaceted approach, one where the service itself is secure because we're not going to have anyone monitoring it to kick people out who may crash it, and allow whoever is attending remotely to talk with other people. So I think there's an opportunity there to talk about the goals and not the technology.
Thanks.
So thank you very much. Any other questions, responses? Direct them to Ron. Sounds like Tim, you, and Micah will be resources as well.
Jeff Bach has been adding in his as well.
Susan, did you want to say something before we?
Yes, yes, I did. Thank you. This is not about any particular about the technology, but two things that I have learned that Zoom has opportunities Zoom has presented us. One thing, the name, when we look at Zoom, we see everyone's name, and that has been such a gift. I think, and everyone mentions that to me. It's so wonderful to be able to see the name next to the person that you kind of forgot what the name was and then get too embarrassed to ask. So I want us to remember that as we go forward. There's a reason for saying that. And the other thing that's happened on Zoom, for those of you who have not done this, it has been an extraordinary experience. There's a Devar Torah or a discussion, but at the end of services, when we have our Kiddush, as it is, we have wonderful conversations about the Torah portion, and they tend to be quite personal. And I would invite everyone to kind of think about that and how we might bring that to our minyan when we are finally in person. And because it's been quite extraordinary, the number of people who participate who we often don't hear from.
Yeah.
So
that's
something to learn from Zoom.
Lovely. Dahlia, yeah.
I just wanted to add that one other very positive aspect that has become clear is it's a means of including people who otherwise would not be able to participate. And I would really hate to lose that. There are all kinds of reasons people can't get to one space, and this is a way that they can be part of the community and of a sub-community. I think what Ron has come up with as a model, whatever the technology is a terrific hybrid.
Yes. I would just add that the herring on Zoom is indescribable. All right. Thank you, everybody. So this is something that, we'll move forward, and we'll get the updates and we'll figure it out. Next is Family Table and Tzedakah. And I don't see Herb on my screen, but I'm sure here. There he is. Okay.
So I'm speaking also for Carol and for Gila Reinstein. And we're asking for the new Center Street Minyan to continue to support Family Table and it's the DACA committee at the same suggested funding level of $72 annually for Family Table and $54 for the Tzedakah committee. As you know, Family Table supports Jews and non-Jews with hunger, food precarity, and Armenian in particular pays for the chalot that are distributed to over 500 families. And the Tzedakah committee helps with tikkun olam across a wide variety of issues, particularly where a relatively small group gift can make a significant difference. Contributions are, of course, voluntary, but we also want to continue the practice of sending out the request for Family Table and the Tzedakah Committee, along with the annual dues, to signify that tzedakah is part of our standard. It's part of who we are as a Jewish religious community. Now, in thinking about Family Table and tzedakah, I just want to reflect personally that I'm influenced by two little threads of Jewish thought. And the first one is, why do we drink 4 cups of wine at the Pesach Sedarim? So Professor Shama Friedman pioneered studies showing that the Tosefta, once considered as a supplemental Talmudic text to the Mishnah, actually contained primary source material, often reworked in the Mishnah. And thus, we find that the first reference ever for 4 cups of wine is in the Tosefta. It's in the Tosefta for chapter 10 of Masechet Pesachim, and it reads, I'm skipping some parts, but it reads, even a poor person should recline, as we recline on Pesach, and they should give him not less than 4 cups of wine. And the parallel verse in the Mishnah reads, Afilu min hatamkui, so even from the community soup kitchen. So now, reading this, the ritual for wine, the brachot and what each cup stands for and all that, it's not discussed at all. The idea here is that there was a basic standard minimum for a Seder meal of 4 cups of wine. We're leaving aside what exactly is a cup, and the wine was mixed with water and so forth. But this basic standard was required of the community to supply to people in material need and for their dignity in celebrating the festival of freedom, Pesach. So I think that the Talmud's Tamchui is today's family table, and that our gift of Chalot parallel this original rabbinic intention for the Arba Kosot. Now, the second question concerns Pesach. So as you all know, the Halach Manya, Halach Anya, in the beginning, this is the bread of affliction, and you have the line, Kol difkin yetevi echul, kol ditzrich yetevi ifsa. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are needy come and celebrate Passover. We all know that. But how does one actually do that? It's quite daunting. So there's a related discussion on a verse in Mishpatim. So the verse is, Im kaspecha talvet et ami et ani imak. So if you loan money, if you have the ability to loan money to a member of the community, and specifically here to the poor person who's with you, it goes on to say that neshech, that interest is forbidden. You're not allowed to charge interest. So there's a discussion of this in the Mechilta, the Rebbe Ishmael, where it posits that there's a person who has the ability to loan, and then 2 people come up to him. One is, so he has to decide who he is. One person, he has an example of an Israelite and a non-Israelite. And then he has an example of a poor person and a rich person, or a poor person of your city, Aniyeh Ircha, or a poor person from another city, Aniyeh Iracheret. So actually in his decision, always the first party was the one who won this particular argument, but I'm not really, I don't think we need to feel bound by this particular argument discussion. We might not even agree on how the author of this came up with the categories, but I think we could all agree that how to explore and balance tzedakah is very complex. And so this exploration of matching the extra community needs, the needs outside of us with our own values, is what actually the tzedakah committee addresses with much time and thought, so that our efforts at Tikkun Olam as a minion can be meaningful and effective. Thank you. I don't know. Gila, I don't see you, but Gila or Carol has anything to add?
Thank you for both for the work and for the lovely teaching. So we will be taking an up and down vote on the ask for the monetary ask, which I don't have those numbers right in front of me. $72 for family table and $54 for tzedakah. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, but first, any responses, questions that you want to direct at Herb, Carol, Gila? Anybody?
Yes, Lisa, I just wanted to thank her for that beautiful teaching and preparing that. And I also wanted to acknowledge that the Tzedakah Committee has donated money, which they sent an email out about, but I just wanted to repeat it and thank them for the donation to the Israel Fund that we're having, that's going on until Tisha B'Av. And it's just, just great to have that additional money added to the monies that everyone else in the Minyan has contributed to various organizations and causes in Israel to what interests them to support. So it's just been great, and we really appreciate that support, from the general Minyan. So I wanted to thank them.
Anybody else?
I have a question. $54 and $72, is that obligatory or is it a suggestion?
It's a suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Gila or someone, can you just give, one or two sentences about how often you meet and how you distribute the money? I think
Sure.
it's implied that, you think very deeply about it, but do you meet, every quarter?
Well, of course, in COVID, we did a lot just by emails back and forth, but normally we would meet 2 or more times a year to distribute the funds that are donated. Most of the money is donated in the fall with the dues, but then there are some people who graciously and generously continue to donate to the Tzedakah Fund, and we take suggestions for recipients from the community. We often put out an email to the business list asking for recommendations. And wait a second, and then we do research to see how these organizations are run and whether they are considered efficient and meet the gold standard of the evaluating groups like GuideStar and I'm blanking on the other group, Charity Navigator. And then we decide which organizations we should donate to and at what dollar level to donate. And we go round and round the table and debate the merits of the different groups, and then come up with how we will use the money. The other thing that we've been doing in the last year or two is putting out requests, targeted requests announcing in advance what the issue is that we are trying to support and responding to what's going on in the world, in Israel, in our local community and so on. And people have responded really very generously to those requests that are in response. So sometimes the money that is donated in the fall is generally has been traditionally just into a pot that then gets distributed by the as the committee reviews the suggestions and the how useful our donation would be. But then through the year, we put out requests in response to the world situation.
So thank you, Gila. I think I'm gonna cut off questions because I'm just noticing the time, and we need to vote on this. We have one more item on the agenda, and people probably don't want to be keep this meeting running beyond 9 p.m. So anyone all in favor of Herb's ask? Any, I don't see any objections. Am I missing any? I think it passes. Thank you. So let's move on to Dina. Again, I don't see her on my screen, but I'm sure she's here.
Yes, I'm here. Do you guys see
Okay,
me?
so there you are. So you want to give us the association update?
Yeah. Can everyone hear me okay? So I just want to begin by saying that I've been meeting with a bunch of people, and I believe a few of them are in this room. So I want to acknowledge their presence. David Small, I think I saw you earlier. I don't know if you're still here. Michael Agus and Missy Beth Pulaski. So, and then it was a team that included people who are also just joining Temple Emmanuel, and that was Rena Fine and Judy Rems. But really, the ideas, the suggestions that we're coming up with, and we spoke about last night, so I will try to be very brief here, is really a outgrowth of everyone who shared their perspective with us and the leadership of both Minyanim as well. We had a meeting last night. I thought it went really well, but perhaps that reflects kind of where I am in the process, because I do think that everyone is in their own place when it comes to thinking about how the two Minyanim will kind of interact with each other going forward. And everyone has their own emotional work to do. And that's why everyone has an individual reaction to our meetings. I heard a lot of positivity last night. Some people heard more hesitation. So I think they're both true. But that's in the spirit of what I'm going to share, just to get you up to speed. What are the 5 or 6 things that we're proposing? I want to begin by saying, and David had good language. I'm sorry, David. Michael, I don't know why I say David. David, you've done a lot of wonderful things too, but I think this is Michael, a lowercase association. I think that's where we're leaning towards here, because that seems to be what people. I think once we actually launch our Tuna Minyanim, things can grow. So Micah, can I share a screen?
Yeah.
Thank you, great. So I'm just gonna share a screen. Hopefully it'll work fine. Unlike yesterday, it's all on one page, so I can be really quick. So there's just a bunch of, I'm seeing this as a roadmap. Doors wide open. This number 1 is really the most important, which is that everyone should feel comfortable going to either minyan anytime they want and as often as they want. That's really, remember, these are all suggestions. I guess a minyan could technically say our doors are closed, but that's pretty foreign from how shuls think of themselves. So I suspect we'll be in the spirit of doors wide open. Shared programming, the idea that a minyan member from one shul versus the other, one minyan versus the other, could get together and organize something. This is something we want. And then if all goes really well, we'll get some people to step up really at any time and to spur on further cross-millennium programs through something that could be called an association committee in the spirit of Spark that ran so magnificently during the worst of COVID. And then to kind of help us have a clearinghouse so we're not stumbling over things like communication, scheduling, and payments. Each minyan would have a liaison who would help streamline that process. The liaisons would not be planning specific programs, but making sure there's no barriers. The fourth takes us to a different place. Up until now, we've been talking about programming. This is talking about the idea that possibly we could get together with some regular frequency and daven together for those that want. Neither minyan is in a position to commit, but we really felt strongly that we want to plant the seed that there could possibly be this if it feels good. Again, no one's committed to anything here. So we did this like fun little bounce back and forth between minyan, where our minyan right here would do something in early December. We were thinking around Hanukkah. It cannot actually be Hanukkah. Between Thanksgiving and actually we have a B'nai Mitzvah at Temple Emmanuel on the second Shabbat of Hanukkah. So really right after Hanukkah, this idea that if it will turn out to be a Kabbalah Shabbat or a Shabbos morning, again, this is just an idea. No one has to vote on whether they like, whether we're going to definitively do this because it's too early to do any of that. Planting seeds and kind of giving us time to think, will this feel like a good thing for us? Purim, then at Temple Emmanuel, where there'll be plenty of room. Families, little kids could go to the numerous options that Temple Emmanuel offer if they so want. We could be together as a hall and do lots of schmoozing. I believe it was the language of Michael, 3 hours of Kiddush, although someone corrected me that we really are supposed to hear every word of the Megillah, so maybe it's not a full 3 hours. And then going back again to our minyan here, and then this is so far right now, so it's again planting the seed, but perhaps a repeat on Simchat Torah. And then many people have said, well, what about Yom Tov Sheni? What about Yamim Noraim? And this is where our liaisons, if we both actually find a liaison, could make sure that we have those conversations at the right time, late winter, early spring, when we both know so much more about ourselves, whether it makes sense to get together on Yantiv or on Yamim Noraim and begin planning for that. We're envisioning this as inviting each other into our home, which is a little bit different than shared programming where we're creating together. But again, this is just a suggestion. And then the last thing is a shared email list. A lot of enthusiasm for this because it's something we've done for so many years. And there is also some people that express concern due to a couple of reasons. One, because we want to figure out how we're going to be communicating within our own minyan. So it just feels like, oh my God, another list and just too many lists. And then also there's been active conversation now for quite a while. How can we make sure tone is good on email lists? And sometimes email lists can contain some language that upsets people. So the question is this actually something that divides us? But overwhelmingly, it does feel like people like the option to be able to opt in. So hence, that's why it appears here. I want to pause now because the next thing is really, I'm thinking if I don't get to it, it's okay, but we went through all the various committees and talked about some of the consequences of what will happen going forward. But most of them, eventually we'll be sharing this in an email, can be shared in the email, but I want, because it's a little bit of a different topic, I just want to pause for a moment, see you guys, and Rhoda, take guidance from you if there's time for 1 or 2 questions or not. Both are fine.
So it's 8:45. So why don't we say 5 minutes for questions and responses and then leave time for Mari? Does that feel okay, Dina?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Seems totally great.
So anybody's thoughts, questions, reactions?
Question.
That I'm looking at, I don't see any hands.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Deborah.
So Dina, on the shared community email list, is the idea that that would be our one community email list? And that there wouldn't be a Center Street Minion community email list?
so glad you asked that question, because that's exactly why it's hard to know whether it makes sense to have, like, what would this look like, this shared community list? It would need to be synchronized with the other minyan. And if we don't know what we want to do yet, then how can we figure out what we want to do as a whole? So it really needs to be a joint conversation. There is a tech committee for the TE group, and I believe there's one for ours as well.
I believe your husband's on it.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I will tell you that, you know, the people that are on the tech committee for TE are unsure, nothing's been decided, but they're unsure whether TE as a community will be interested in a community list, not because they don't want a community list, but because of what I spoke earlier, at least the voices that are being heard right now, which may not represent the entire TE Kahal. And I think there will be a process where the TE Kahal will be heard. But there's a feeling like, well, if we actually have this, then, you know, whether it's about politics or otherwise, there can be some devices around it. So they're wondering whether it is something that they want to continue. But I think that would be something that would be brought to the TE Kahal, and they're just not there yet.
But in terms of us, I
Yeah,
mean,
our tech committee has been assuming that we're having a business list and a community list, just because we feel that having our own community list helps to build community, and we need to do that. That's an important thing for us to do, and we're not going to be able to do that as effectively with a shared community list. Now, that's not, we don't feel as strongly. Well, I've been talking to the other members of the tech team, but I think we feel that having a separate, like an association community list like Dina's talking about, is fine, and it serves an entirely different purpose.
I wanted to just add, because I was at the meeting last night, that I think there was a strong feeling that people wanted to hear about milestones in each other's lives, that we still have these strong human connections with each other. So moving forward, just, you know, like Micah said about having an association, small n, small a, or m, whatever we're going to call it, serves a completely different function, and I think reflects the sentiment from what I heard last night of caring about each other's communities.
Anybody else?
Yes, on another matter, I seem to be getting the sense that after January, we're not planning to have a combined Shiva committee and combined Shiva attendance, and I'm
Edie, I can't hear you. Could you get closer to your mic, please?
sorry.
Thank you.
I've had the sense from a couple different things that somehow there's a decision that we're not, after January, continuing to have a joint Shiva committee and Shiva everything participation. And I didn't know whether there was a reason that decision was made, and am I correct? That's a decision.
So Dina, maybe respond to that, and then we will shift to Mari. And any other questions, lack of clarity, or what have you, or suggestions, please email to Dina. Is that okay, Dina?
Yes, I just want to respond to I want to respond to Janet first. This is why we really want liaisons from each minyan, because liaisons are gonna make sure that we have clear channels of communications, whether or not we have a community list. A community list is, by the way, never complete, because only people, even how we are right now, only some people opt in. So that is super important, independent of whether there ends up being a association-wide community list. And then Edie, as to your question, I'm going to share the second page, which was looking at various committees. But in terms of the Shiva Minyan, there was a decision to keep organizationally the Shiva Minyan together through the end of December. And then after that, the default, I mean, people could change their mind comes November when we learn things about actually being independent. But the default would be that the organizational structure would separate, which does not mean that people would not attend each other minyanim. You would still be able to sign up for each other's minyanims. It's just talking about it organizationally.
I guess I'm asking because I know I heard a lot of sentiment when we split that one of the many things we would do together was Shiva. And so I was pretty surprised there was a decision without a discussion.
Missy, I'm not sure if you're still here, if you want to address that. Missy was very skillfully working with both minyanim. So it's not so, you could, the Center Street Minyan can't decide on its own. So Missy was working with representatives of the Temple Emmanuel Minyan. Do you want to jump in, Missy, for a second?
Yeah, I'll just say very briefly, it's pretty much what I said last night. Originally, I thought that we would do a joint for a year. Temple Emmanuel has a bereavement committee, so I think there was some thought that I'm hoping that this will be approved by Temple Emmanuel. We'll do this jointly. The truth is, as far as the kahal, either kahal will feel, it will be very, very, very little difference. It's really just about how the community functions, and it's nothing to get. I am not getting worked up over it. We want peace and joy, reigning in the land, and God willing, there'll be few Shivas. Shiva signups will go to both kahals. We're going to make very sure of that.
So I want to thank all of the presenters tonight. I'm sure people will have additional thoughts, questions as soon as we sign off. So send them to us. Each presentation contains what we've all been talking about, evidence of how much incredible commitment and energy and dedication there is in this community. People are just doing wonderful, wonderful work. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who participated tonight. Is there someone who would like to lead Mari? Do we have an interested person? Do people want to do Mari? What do you think? So maybe we're signing off. Okay. All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Rhoda.
Oh, you're most welcome.
And Mazel Tov.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.